Hi, welcome to a professional learning focused on a checklist for welcoming new multilingual students to your school, offered by the Maine Department of Education. I'll be presenting to you today. My name is Jenny Lunt. I've been a teacher in Maine working with multilingual students for the last 20 years, and I'm currently serving as a teacher leader fellow with the Office of Teaching and Learning, ESOL, Multilingual and Bilingual Education. The goals for this session are to review the framework for developing welcoming processes for new students in your school, examine a tool, which is a multilingual students orientation checklist, and identifying additional resources that may be helpful. First, I just want to remind you that there are excellent resources on the DOE's website if you want information about enrolling and registration. They also have excellent information about placement and identification and our WIDA screener and other processes. That's not the focus of this professional learning, but I encourage you to go there. They have great resources. So first, just thinking about how we foster a school culture where all staff feel empowered to engage and advocate for new multilingual students. I know that all schools have different ways they welcome in new students wherever those students might come from. Um, However, when students come from outside the state or outside the country or speak different languages, it can be a challenge to make sure that all staff feel that it is their role to be part of that team to support the orientation of that new student. And it may be that your school's typical orientation process may need some scaffolding. And so underlying all of that, we want to make sure that we embrace an asset rather than deficit mindset about the new student, and that we focus on identifying who they are, what their interests are, what are their talents, what are their hobbies. We want to make sure that we focus on them as a person and a whole person before thinking about any deficits that we may be thinking we need to support. And this just comes from that paradigm shift in focused on the difference in the way we used to think about the role of the ESOL teacher and how they were really the guide and the support, the key person in the school for multilingual students. And now we've just really shifted that paradigm and said, well, everyone in the school is the advocate, is the key to making sure that the student has a successful transition. And there's a great resource, the WIDA Focus Bulletin on collaboration, and I recommend it really highly. It helps kind of tease out this paradigm shift a little bit more if you feel like that's helpful for folks in your school. These questions come from a resource, the Support Ed Framework for Multilingual Learner Education. And it's really thinking about the strengths, the advocacy, how can your school be more culturally responsive, and how can you right off the bat start creating those meaningful connections and conversations that can foster language and social development. And I recommend looking at the Support Ed Framework a little bit more if you want to dive in a little deeper. So before the student arrives for their first day, we want to make sure that everyone involved is gathering information about that student so that they can share it with everyone who's going to be part of the student's educational team. And that means using an interpreter or a cultural broker to talk with parents, caregivers, guardians about that child and all that they are bringing to the table. We want to make sure that we know about what they're excited about, what concerns they may have, and just spending the time writing down those notes at the beginning can be extremely valuable for all the folks who are going to be working with that student. We have on the DOE website a sample multilingual newcomer intake form, and I recommend that you take a look at that to see some examples of how that can look. So for the rest of this professional learning time, I'm going to review this tool, which is an orientation checklist for new multilingual students. And you can download it right from our website and use it as is with your team, or you could use it as a template and you could create your own. And that document you create on your own that might kind of mimic this one could be an electronic document that you share with everybody who is going to be working with that student as a place to link documentation and assessment as you get to know them. So this is a 4-page document, and the first page is thinking about even before the student comes, what can you do to get ready? I have helped enroll maybe hundreds of students. And I know that without a checklist, I can often forget some really key stuff. So this is meant as a reminder, but also as sort of a way to ping your memory on, oh, maybe I should make this connection, or, oh, maybe I got to do this ahead of time. Every school district deals with all these different ways that they welcome in new students in different ways. So this checklist is not assuming that anyone is coming in the same way. It's more of a way to think about all the different menu of items that you might want to take care of. So on the first page, we're thinking about who's going to communicate about transportation, both setting it up and getting that information to the family. It is great if someone in the building who's already working on that issue can also be learning how to use the language line or another resource to then communicate that information to the family, either by phone or by email if they have that available, or by WhatsApp or text message. That to and from information is essential. Students getting lost on their way to or from school is obviously a very unwelcoming and difficult way to start off. So we want to make sure that that is always taken care of. Um, Emailing the main office staff and working with them to make sure that when that student walks in the door, that someone is there to greet them, pronouncing their name right, and planning for who they will call to make sure that that student has a guide out of the main office. Sometimes you may set up ahead of time a same language buddy, if possible, or a student ambassador who is trained to support new students, and just let them know, hey, we have a new student tomorrow and they speak these languages. They're learning English, but it would be great if you could help them find where they're going to go and be their buddy for the day. Um, Along with that, maybe with that student, you can use their schedule or a different schedule to create a temporary shadow schedule. And it's important to make sure that people know that this is temporary, because you may be making some decisions based on some placement information for math or electives once you've gotten to know the student better. Um, Letting the staff members know who may have the student in those shadow classes or in the shadow day classes, so that they are prepared to welcome that student. Typically, I would write a 1-paragraph intro of the student, just saying, hey, this is so and so. They'll be shadowing your class for tomorrow. They love drawing, or they're really excited to become a nurse someday, or they are a little bit nervous right now, but they would love it if you spoke Spanish, because I know you speak some Spanish. Those kinds of things go a long way to make sure that staff are ready to host that student. You may also need to just gather some forms and information from that students typically get at the beginning of the year or when they enroll in a school, but you may need to look at the language access plan for your school to make sure that you can get those interpreted so that they can be signed. And then you can send out a message to the welcome team, whoever those people might be, and let them know what is the plan for the day now that you've kind of planned it out. The next step is to design a first or second day plan. And these are just some of the things that might happen on the student's first or second day, or maybe in their first week. Um, a school tour of the key places. Some schools create a slideshow with visuals that is, and sometimes translated. And this is a great way to help students understand major things like the school calendar, school rules, photos of important people that they can go to for help, um, all those kinds of information that may be challenging to communicate. Um, Getting them set up with an iPad or a Chromebook with their login and passwords, that can take some time, so it may be helpful to do that ahead of time, but make sure that they get that. Students are always very eager to get their locker or know where their homeroom is so they can identify where they're putting their stuff. Um, It's great if that's near a language buddy or with that ambassador if possible. Another thing is to really go through slowly and explain that schedule for the day and the plan for the day. Who will do that with the student? Make sure that somebody's will be doing that. And then connect the student ambassador, make sure that they understand what their role is, make sure that the student is going to be taken care of at lunch and knows how to access lunch, and then making any notes that may come up that day. The next part is really based on your own school processes. In different schools, different people do the work. So, if this is a student who does require a WIDA screener, then that would be done by a trained staff member. Um, and then there may be some prior language testing from past schools. There may be transcripts. Those are things that maybe need to be reviewed by the ESOL teacher along with the guidance staff so that they can think about placement. I think it's really helpful to get a writing sample in the student's language that they feel most comfortable writing in. That can be very, very helpful. Even if you don't have someone on staff who can interpret it, it can be something useful later on. And then also, if the student has had some English instruction for any amount of time, it would be great to get an English writing sample. Obviously, math placement is a big deal in most schools. And so, getting a math skills assessment, either one that's translated or in English, making sure that someone has assessed that, and then additional assessments that maybe come out. The last page, I think, is just really essential for the next steps in relationship building and trust building with the family. The first part is just following up with that student. They, after the first day, will often just look completely overwhelmed, and it may not be the time to ask them, in depth, how can I help you? What idea or what questions do you have? They may need a couple days before they can come up with the questions that they want to ask through a translation tool or an interpreter. Um, Sometimes after the first week or the first month, it's really important to do a check in with them to see what issues are coming up. They may have come out of a silent period or they may be raring to go, but in any case, they may have some big questions that it's important someone is assigned to make sure that they have that opportunity to ask those questions. Make sure their schedule is finalized as soon as possible and then give them a new hard copy. Follow up with that student's family. Let them know through a cultural broker or interpreter about the programming, about the math placement, about homework expectations, about anything that you're concerned about. Build that relationship as soon as you can. As soon as, and it's a great opportunity to just say, hey, your student's been here 2 weeks now. We want to make sure that we answer any questions, just making sure those lines of communication are open both ways. And then following up with classroom teachers, making sure that everybody has a chance to talk about how it's going for the student. Sometimes the student connects best with the PE teacher. And so following up with that PE teacher about concerns they may have that are popping up, that kind of thing is really important. And it may need that we need to involve social workers or additional staff members, nurses, others, to follow up on concerns that may evolve. And then lastly, I do have the link here, for follow up with MTSS or special education staff. If through the intake process, it was indicated that this is a student where we want to make sure that if the family indicated at the beginning that they had some concerns around learning or development, we want to make sure that we take care of those concerns and involve the appropriate staff members right away. So that is the 4-page checklist. I hope you download it. I hope you try it out. It would be awesome to hear how people are using it. And then our last slide here is just several different other resources that you may want to examine as you're thinking about supporting students who are new to your school. Reach out, and I hope that you have a great year welcoming new students. Thanks.